The fourth set of college football playoff rankings are in. Here's a look at the top 12 teams. Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State remain unchanged. Notre Dame up a spot. Miami comes in at 6, followed by Georgia, Tennessee, SMU, Indiana dropping 5 spots after their loss to Ohio State. Boise State up a spot, and Clemson up 5 spots to the 12th ranking. Here's a look at the projected bracket now. The top 5 conference champions will earn automatic bids, with the 4 highest ranked teams receiving a first-round bye. So, welcome to the field, Arizona State and SMU. SMU against Notre Dame. I'm sure the over might maybe in the high 50s. Both those teams averaging 39 points per game this season. Indiana, Penn State did not meet the regular season. A Big Ten battle there. Arizona State, Ohio State in Columbus. Tennessee and Georgia, of course, they met in the regular season. And, well, you know what happened there. So, how's this going to play out? Let's get some reaction. Welcome to CBS Sports senior college football writer Dennis Dodd and 24/7 Sports college football analyst Brad Crawford. Okay, the one thing that we circled when we first saw it, Brad, was you saw Notre Dame behind Penn State. You didn't like that.
Penn State, for some reason, I mean, the committee has an infatuation with this football team. The best win is Illinois. They do have a quality loss, Ohio State at home. But right now, Notre Dame behind them. Notre Dame just obliterated. It's like 8 straight opponent. Notre Dame is game control right now is just off the charts. By the way, Army was unbeaten, and now Army's not ranked because of what the Irish did to the Black Knights. So despite the quality win, Notre Dame staying at 5 is a little bit surprising to me. Since that loss to NIU, there might not be a more dominant team in college football right now than the Fighting Irish. I still think Notre Dame gets a first-round home game as long as they beat USC this weekend, but I am still surprised, again, that Penn State is at 4 and Notre Dame did not move ahead of the Nittany Lions after Penn State won by a single point on the road at Minnesota.
Notre Dame leads FBS with a plus 301 point differential entering this week. But Dennis, can you understand why the committee would do this? Because if you look at their loss, Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois, and Penn State lost to Ohio State. So if we are looking at those 2 factors, Penn State gets the 4 spot there because of that. They didn't lose to Northern Illinois. They lost to the team that's ranked 2nd in the rankings, Ohio State.
Yeah, look, if Northern Illinois was winning the MAC or was in the MAC championship game, we might have a discussion here.
They're not.
But that's hanging around their neck like a lead tire, weighing them down right now, and the committee's going to make them pay for it. Whether they win out or not, obviously against USC. I would disagree on that Penn State game being a quality loss for them. I was there, and I know it was only 7 points, but it seemed like 20. They were almost non-competitive offensively. That goal line stand, or those goal line plays that they called with 5 minutes left, were some of the most unimaginative plays I've ever seen, with the season on the line against a quality opponent. 3 runs into the line, and then you don't even take a look at Ty Warren on 4th down for an option there. So it was a game they lost by a touchdown, but it wasn't like they were going to win that game. They were up 10-0, blew it quickly on a day that Ohio State wasn't great, frankly. Neither team was. Yeah. So I don't count that as that much of a quality win. I am more surprised, and we can talk about this, at South Carolina at 15, and we talked about this off air. There's a pretty easy path for them to get into the top 12 and be considered, given that Alabama and Ole Miss are above them. I have no idea how those teams are going to come out in rivalry games this week, because they in their minds may think they've got nothing to play for. And South Carolina's playing Clemson at 12. That takes care of them. They move into the top 12 with a win if Mississippi State beats Ole Miss and Auburn beats Alabama. Am I wrong?
Clemson, though, would get to the ACC title game with a Miami loss at Syracuse.
Right.
So you could still make the argument there, if Clemson wins their conference, they are going to be in the field, because, as we know, the committee values conference championships, and they're not going to penalize you if you lose in your conference championship, because they want to avoid the whole idea of getting a bye. And every team, by the way, just so we're clear here, conference championship Saturday is December 7th. So you're going to have 2 weeks off before the first playoff game. So everybody's essentially going to have an extended bye. So whether you're arguing whether you want to plan the game to get an extra week, I don't know how much value that holds. But look, Brad, you and I have been talking about South Carolina for the last month. I don't want to play them if I'm a top team. Like they are playing some of the best football we've seen.
I mean, the quarterback Lenore Sellers right now is college football's best quarterback the last 4.5 weeks or so. I mean, 12 touchdowns, 1 turnover his last 5 starts. I want to get back to what Dennis said, though. I do think if the Gamecocks beat Clemson and then maybe Clemson back ends to the ACC championship game and then wins against SMU, well, then Gamecocks have a quality win not only against Clemson, but the eventual ACC champion. But I don't know if Alabama's going to lose to Auburn. Ole Miss is not going to lose to Mississippi State. And right now, those are the 2 elephants in the room that are still ahead of the Gamecocks. In my projection, I thought the Gamecocks would be ranked in the middle of Alabama and Ole Miss. But right now, Bama and Ole Miss still being ahead of them and having head-to-head wins, that's critical. So unless the committee thinks Gamecocks are better after it went over Clemson than the 2 SEC teams right now just in front of them, I think the path is still difficult to overcome for South Carolina. But I do agree with Dennis that it went over a top 12 Clemson team, especially convincingly this weekend on the road, would have looked very, very good as a lasting impression.
South Carolina's last loss was against Alabama, 2-point defeat. Alabama has made 8 of the first 10 college football playoffs, now on the outside looking in, as they fall all the way to 13, some 6 spots. So on the outside looking in, but certainly a chance to still get in. Brad, what do you make of their outlook of trying to get into the college football playoff? Because they're going to need to beat Auburn, and they're going to need some help along the way here.
Yeah, because a win over Hugh Freeze right now is not going to move the needle to that committee, despite, Auburn beating A&M last weekend. Bama needs help. They need maybe an SMU loss. I mean, critically speaking, the ACC being a 1-bid league gets Bama into the playoff. So Bama needs to not only win Saturday, needs to look good in the Iron Bowl, and has to have some help in front of it. But I do think if it comes down to Alabama and South Carolina as that last bid, with both those teams finishing 9-3, the win over South Carolina in October still carries weight. That's why we see Bama right now ranked ahead of the Gamecocks.
Yeah, Dennis,
and
a 3-loss Alabama team's getting in over a 3-loss South Carolina team. We know how this works.
Well, historically, Alabama's got every benefit of the doubt from the committee, going back to 2011 and the LSU rematch, 2017. Twice they didn't even have to win their division to play in the BCS and the college football playoff, and they are a living example of a brand name being stuck in the heads of those committee members. This is not a very good Alabama team compared to what they did, and it probably would have fallen off a little bit had Nick Saban stayed, but you don't know what you're going to get week to week with Alabama. They got that great win over Georgia, but they go on the road, and Jalen Milroe turns into something else. He's a Heisman winner at home. He goes on the road, and he plays like he did it at Oklahoma. I get that. But eye test. I'm just in love with South Carolina right now. Ole Miss had a chance and, stepped in the mud against Florida. I just question how motivated these teams are going to be. I mean, the only thing they've got right now is the fact that they're hovering around number 12 and something might happen. I don't know if they have much to play for. I think South Carolina in a rivalry game with those possibilities in front of it, and the way they're playing, as Brad mentioned, Norris has been great. I think has a definite advantage here.
Brad, is that the path then for South Carolina? Beat Clemson, but still need a little bit of help in front. Like, are we talking about they need Texas A&M to beat Texas on Saturday? What are the dominoes that need to fall for South Carolina to get into this field?
No, I think best case scenario is we've seen the last 2 weeks like 30 crazy, chaotic scenarios go in the Gamecocks' favor. This needs to happen again. You need maybe Bama to lose the Iron Bowl. Egg Bowl going Mississippi State's favor could certainly help. What if Tennessee loses at Vanderbilt? Yeah. Then Tennessee's likely out, and the Gamecocks at 9-3 take that spot. So there's still some upsets to be had in the SEC, I think, for the Gamecocks. But this is such a distraction right now for Shane Beamer's team. The Gamecocks just need to take care of business, let the chips fall where they may, and see what happens with the committee. Because if you go to Clemson and hang a crooked number on a top 12 football team, the Tigers are right now, and that would be a lasting impression.
Well, we know that the committee still favors Indiana here. They fall 5 spots. They're 10th now in the latest CFP rankings. Dennis, your reaction here to Indiana falling to 10?
I wrote this a couple of weeks ago, Hakeem. I thought in the ACC and in the SEC and the Big Ten, third place was the absolute best place to be because you don't have to risk your record. You don't have to play an extra game. You can rest. That's what Indiana essentially is going to be. I know Penn State's in there as well, but that's essentially what Indiana is going to be. They could play without shoulder pads Saturday and beat Purdue. So they are in the playoff. In fact, I tweeted at halftime of the Ohio State game, is Indiana punched its ticket? Who's with me? And they got blown out 23 points to 23 points. But when you balance that with those three SEC teams incurring their third loss, that puts them in solidly. I think they're fine. They're not going to lose to Purdue. Purdue's one of the worst teams in the country. So I think it's just another celebration. It's just a question of whether they host or not. It doesn't look like they're going to do it now. But I would not want to play that team if I was Ohio State or anybody. I think they're very, very dangerous.
Yeah, those three SEC teams losing Saturday night after the Indiana loss to Ohio State was huge. I mean, A&M stubbing its toe at Auburn, Alabama at Oklahoma, and then Ole Miss losing at Florida. I mean, that was a domino chain reaction that worked in Kurt Cignetti's favor. I thought Indiana would be number 9 tonight, not number 10. It's fine either way. IU, like you said, Dennis, is in the playoff. But this is a game 38-15 against Ohio State. It was actually more competitive than that. 2 special teams touchdowns, basically, 2 swing plays. IU's D-line looked good. They played pretty well in that game, all things considered. So IU's a lock to make the playoff as long as they win this weekend.
Yeah,
and Ryan Day was doing something there at the end with that kneel down. They ran that sneak into the end zone. I don't know what the message there was, but
leave no doubt. That was the message, Dennis. Leave no doubt. That was the message.
That was a message for Michigan, I think.
Well,
more than
maybe that too, but you know how much the committee favors style points.
Yeah.
So winning by 23 or winning by less than that is not going to matter. It makes sense to say, hey, you won by 23, and then everybody's saying, well, it was 2 special teams errors. Still, the defense played better in the second half. I look at this bracket real quick. My initial takeaway, the fact that SMU and Notre Dame is projected a first-round playoff, I'm happy about that because I don't want to face either of those teams right now. Both those teams are playing really good. So if one of them knocks one of them out, fine with me as you try to get to the national championship. And here's another look at the bracket. Big game, Dennis Dodd and Brad Crawford here on CBS Sports HQ. And you can find more of their content online on CBSSports.com as well. So Tennessee and Georgia, an SEC rematch. Georgia beat Tennessee a couple weeks ago. Arizona State, Ohio State in the 12-5 game. Indiana, Penn State, a Big Ten battle at Happy Valley. Let's make that the night game on Saturday night. Can we do that? And then SMU, Notre Dame in South Bend. Again, those teams are both averaging 39 points per game right now, and they will they'll duke it out in the first round if that's what happens here as the projected bracket is out after the 4th set of CFP rankings. Coming up, the biggest winners and losers from the latest college football playoff rankings. We're back here on CBS Sports HQ. Keep it locked. Back here on CBS Sports HQ and back to the bracket. Oh, what a thing of beauty it is. Welcome Arizona State and SMU into the dance, now into the field currently. Still got some work to do, but as you take a look at the bracket, the top 4 unchanged. Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State. But, of course, that could change. Texas needing to beat Texas A&M. The winner of that game goes to play Georgia in the SEC championship game. So Georgia could be flipping spots. They could be the projected 2 seed when all is said and done. This is far from over, but this is just the projection right now. Just a reminder, the top 5 conference champions earning automatic bids. The 4 highest ranked teams getting that first-round bye. As you see, Boise State eyeing a first-round bye. 11 games to be played, culminating with the national championship in Atlanta. Welcoming 2-time Super Bowl champ Bryant McFadden and 24/7 Sports national college football reporter Brandon Marcello here to talk winners and losers. Brandon, we'll start with you. Who's your biggest winner from the 4th set of CFP rankings?
Well, you got to look at Indiana remaining in the top 10. They're going to get in the college football playoff if they win their game here in the regular season finale against Purdue. But, of course, also I think the big winner here is Boise State, continuing to distance itself a little bit from the Big 12, which is the biggest threat to get that first-round bye, that 4th spot, that coveted 4th spot as the 4th highest-ranked conference champion. If Boise State wins out at this moment, it looks like Boise State would end up getting that first round bye, which is incredible to consider where we all started at the beginning of the season.
Well, for me, it's the Clemson Tigers. And the reason why I feel Clemson, they're the biggest winner, is because weeks ago, when they took a home loss to Louisville, we all felt like they had no shot to get into the playoffs. But because of all the chaos that has happened recently, they're sitting in a very, very nice spot to be able to get into the playoffs without playing in the ACC championship game. Because we all felt like, when you look at how the committee was valuing some teams, we felt like the ACC will only get one team into the playoffs. Now, because of the chaos, the championship team, the team that wins the championship, will get in. But with Clemson, if they can win out and beat a very, very competitive South Carolina team at home, they will get into the college football playoffs without competing for the ACC championship game. And that's something that we thought would not happen based on how the committee and how other teams were valued coming into the playoff rankings. And now it's a total different story, especially with Clemson sitting inside the top 12.
Brandon, you agree with that? Clemson is in with a win over South Carolina? It's that simple?
I don't know. I don't think so necessarily. I mean, we still have to consider here, of course, what's going to happen in the ACC championship game. And for that matter, Miami hasn't clinched right now. They still need to beat Syracuse at this point. I think it's going to affect things a little bit from the committee's perspective about how they view the ACC. But they are very well in a good position there because they get a chance here to have another great resume win against South Carolina this upcoming week. So Clemson in a pretty good spot. And as Bryant said, I mean, we were not expecting this just a few weeks ago when they lost to Louisville. So credit to them that the committee sees them in a positive light at this point.
I'm making sure SMU's in, just so you know.
Right.
SMU's got, if they continue to play the way they have, and if they can go and perhaps win the ACC championship, there's no question they'd have to be in. But the way they've played this season.
The committee weighs it a big time when you go to a conference championship game. That is seen as an extra benefit to that, and it's going to be very difficult for them to say, hey, runner-up in the ACC, you're left out for a home team that's sitting at home.
Yeah, their only loss to BYU, a 3-point loss back in September, and BYU still in the rankings. They were down 5 spots after their loss to Arizona State, down to 19 as they lose. Arizona State moving up. Arizona State is in the field, one of the teams that got into the field this week, as is SMU. All right, so, Brandon, who's your biggest loser from the latest rankings?
Right now, it's the entire Big 12. They are sitting behind Boise State for that spot to get the first-round bye as one of the top 4 seeds right now. And it's an issue because you look at the rankings right now. At 16 is Arizona State. They're the highest one in the Big 12. 18 is behind them at Iowa State. But look at the team that they're sandwiching. Tulane at number 17. Why do I mention that? Well, they're in the AAC. If they continue to win out, what happens if the Big 12 ends up having a 3-loss Big 12 champion, which is possible? Why do I say that? Because there's 9 teams still battling for the Big 12 championship game spot right now. So it's possible, not likely, possible. We could be talking about the Big 12 being completely left out of the playoff if Tulane keeps winning and then grabs that other spot as a 5th highest ranked conference champion. Could you imagine that? The Big 12 being shut out. Very unlikely, but you look at their rankings, the committee's certainly kind of teasing that a little bit. Even, by the way, Tulane lost at home earlier this year to a Big 12 team, Kansas State. And Kansas State is ranked below Tulane right now.
I cannot see a scenario, BMAC. I can't see a scenario where the Big 12 is left out. I agree what Brandon is saying, but you can't leave the Big 12 out of the playoff field. You just cannot. And my gripe here is the fact Boise State in a Mountain West Conference that's been around for 25, 26 years is going to get a first-round bye over Arizona State. If Arizona State wins out and they beat Iowa State, let's say just for the sake of conversation, and you're telling me Arizona State's got to go play Ohio State, they don't get a bye, they got to play the Buckeyes in Columbus. I don't think that's going to be the matchup because I think it's going to be Oregon because I think Ohio State's going to beat Oregon in the Big Ten title game, but that's for another conversation. But my point is, you're telling me a conference been around for forever? The Big 12 is going to have to go be the 12th seed, B-back?
Yeah, I can see it happening. And you know why? Because we saw a conference be left out of the playoffs last year in the team that was undefeated.
You're right.
So in terms of the committee and how they value things, you have to expect the unexpected. Because if you look at the entire Big 12, they've been so inconsistent. BYU had to hold on to that, had the lock in terms of the best team in the Big 12 for weeks, and then they squandered it away. And you thought Iowa State had an opportunity, they squandered the opportunity away. You look at Colorado, all they had to do was win. They controlled their own destiny. They took one on the chin last week to Kansas. So in terms of what Brad is stating, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Big 12 champion have to travel in the first week of the playoffs in college football because of the uncertainties and the inconsistencies we've seen associated with the teams, the high-value teams in the Big 12. I think that is a reality because, as I stated, you have to expect the unexpected. We saw the ACC not get a representative into the playoffs last year, even though it's 12 teams and not 4. You still have to expect the unexpected when it comes to uncertainties with the Big 12.
Well, I already see on the lower third TV jargon. You got SMU and Miami as your biggest losers. I would say they're winners. You got 2 ACC teams in. And you got Clemson sitting on the outside.
And that's why I had Clemson as my biggest winner, because if everything works out as accordingly, if Clemson wins, SMU wins, Miami wins, SMU Miami will play for the AFC Championship game, right? I only see the winner getting into the playoffs.
Okay.
I don't see the loser getting into the playoffs because when you look at either side, Miami or SMU, they don't wow you with their schedule. It's not like you see a signature win on either side in terms of their schedule, like, wow, that was the game they needed to win to get into the playoffs. So when you look at some of the outside teams currently in the outside of the top 12, the Ole Misses of the world, the Alabamas of the world, with 3 losses, by the way, they have more signature wins than an SMU or a Miami. So they are my biggest loser because it's supposed to be a luxury to get to your conference championship game because you win, you get a bye. But in terms of the ACC and how they value the competition or the devaluing of the competition, I believe, guys, Brad and Hakeem, the loser of the ACC championship game won't get an invitation to the playoffs.
But that Clemson will. So you're still getting 2 teams in, is what you're saying, from the ACC? You're getting Clemson, yes, and you're getting the winner from the title game.
If Clemson beats South Carolina,
okay, I'm following you.
If you look at what South Carolina has done over the last few
5
weeks,
straight wins.
They've been a very, very competitive, high-level team. And you look at some of their losses, they were on the cusp of beating. They should have beat LSU.
2 points to
Alabama.
Yep.
Yes. So I think the committee would value Clemson beating South Carolina more so than the committee valuing SMU beating Miami and saying Miami should get in also, because Miami, let's keep it real, they should have lost to Cal.
Yeah.
They should have lost to Virginia Tech, Louisville, and then they took one on the chin on the road against Georgia Tech. And you look at they haven't played a ranked team yet. And look at SMU's schedule. They lost to who? BYU?
Yep, by 3.
Clemson lost to who? Georgia?
What? Georgia?
In college football, Brad and Hakeem, I think we all would agree to this. There are such things as good losses and bad losses in college football.
Yeah,
I hate it, but that's how you value certain teams. Oh, that's a good loss. That's a bad loss. For me, when you look at the teams that SMU lost to and the team that Miami lost to, I think both cases would be considered bad losses.
All right. Brandon, I know you want to say something. Get in the last punch. You can get in the last punch, and then we got to go to break.
Well, if we're talking about SMU specifically getting left out, I don't see how you leave out an SMU team that only has 1 loss in the ACC, and it's in the conference championship game. How do you leave that out?
You don't. Thank you. You don't leave them out.
So let me ask you guys this question. Can I ask this question real quick before we go? If SMU loses to Miami, they have 2 losses just like Clemson, right?
Correct.
Who would you say?
But one played in the conference championship.
But who would you say had the more competitive best win? Like, if you look at their entire schedule, who would you say this team had the best signature win, had the best win?
SMU beat Louisville on the road. Louisville beat the crap out of Clemson at Clemson.
Okay, so who SMU lost to, Brad?
They
it's the one team, BYU. And then in the conference championship, the playoff committee is supposed to reward teams that make it to the conference championship game. They have long said that.
Vegas.
And I don't see how SMU, if they only have one loss and it being in the championship game, gets left out in favor of a Clemson team that was drilled by a Louisville team that SMU beat on the road.
There you go. Vegas thinks SMU's in. I think SMU's in. If you haven't watched SMU play, they are fun. And that's not a qualifier to get in. They score points. They're a good team. Brett Lashley has that team firing on all cylinders. They make the move to the ACC, and they can compete.
The only team in like 25 years, the only team in 25 years that was able to win a game despite losing the turnover margin 6-0 at Duke. I mean, they're a very, very, very good team to be able to win that.
It is the final week of the regular season in college football. Coming up, who's going to survive a high-stakes rivalry week? The conversation continues with Clemson and South Carolina next on CBS Sports HQ. It is the final week of the regular season in college football. Makes me a little sad, I'm going to be honest with you. But we do have the playoff that's on the horizon. Here's a look at the notable games with playoff implications. South Carolina and Clemson clashing in the Palmetto Bowl. Notre Dame and USC renewing pleasantries on CBS. One of the greatest rivalries in all of sports, Auburn, Alabama in the Iron Bowl. Arizona State against Arizona in the Duel in the Desert, also known as the Territorial Cup Series as well. And then a huge game in College Station, Texas against Texas A&M. The winner plays Georgia in the SEC Championship. Who's going to survive a high-stakes rivalry week? Let's welcome back our high-stakes rivalry experts. They like to debate, and this is pretty good. Two-time Super Bowl champ Bryant McFadden and 24/7 Sports national college football reporter Brandon and Marcello. All right, let's start in College Station. Texas A&M hosting Texas. Winner plays Georgia for the SEC championship game. Aggies are coming off a 4-overtime loss at Auburn. Brandon, what would have to happen for Texas A&M to beat Texas? And it probably wouldn't be that crazy because SEC teams go on the road and they lose every week, it feels like.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And also, Texas hasn't really quite played a difficult schedule. You would say their marquee win is on the road against Vanderbilt, which is no longer ranked in the CFP top 25. And we just saw a couple of weeks ago, Texas had to pull away late against a subpar Arkansas team to win 20-10. So, yeah, they're definitely on upset watch here. Texas A&M, I think their defensive line is the key here. Can they get pushed? Can they pressure Quinn Ewers? I think they can with that defensive line. Like Quinn Ewers, remember, hurt his ankle this past week. How healthy is he? And also, is there still some hesitation there with him after his abdominal injury? I kind of wonder about that as well. He's going to be teed off on by this Texas A&M defense. They are very much on upset watch. This is probably, I would say, their most difficult game yet on the schedule, and it's their last game of the regular season.
Yeah, Texas is a 5.5-point favorite, BMAC. Who do you like in this Lone Star showdown?
I'm right there with Brandon. I really believe this is a great opportunity for A&M, especially being at home. To your point, when you look at SEC teams, the good teams, they struggle sometimes on the road. I think the same thing was surfaced between these two rivals in this rivalry renewed based on seeing what A&M has done at home and seeing what Texas has done on the road. And to your point, Brandon, no question, it's something about Quinn Ewers. Since he's returned from his injury weeks ago, he's not playing to the same level that he was playing at before getting injured. And you remember what Georgia did to Texas at home, how they dominated in the trenches, how their defensive line dominated for 4 quarters against the Longhorns. I can foresee the same thing happening when you look at the Aggies and their defensive front, because that is the strong point for their defense. Everything starts and stops with their defensive linemen, and you know they understand they have no room for error, and I'm taking the Aggies in this matchup. I can't wait to see how it unfolds, but I put my trust more so in the home team than the Longhorns.
You taking the points, or you taking money line like Aggies are pulling off an upset and we're throwing absolute more chaos into the picture?
I'm a double dip. I'm going to take the points, but I'm also sprinkling something on the money line.
Okay. Wow. Agent of chaos here, Bryant McFadden. I like it. All right. In the ACC, this is what we've talked about at length. Clemson clinches a spot in the ACC championship game with a Miami loss at Syracuse. Clemson clashing with South Carolina in the Palmetto Bowl. SMU's already into the ACC championship. Gamecocks have won 5 straight games. Dabo Swinney has never defeated a ranked South Carolina team, Brandon. This is a prove-it game for Dabo and the Tigers. You want to be in the playoff field? Go win this game, and maybe we're in.
It's a resume builder, certainly, and it's a good time to get it because it'll be fresh on the minds of the playoff committee. Also, as in addition to the argument we're having about do they get in over even the ACC runner-up, what about Indiana that's just hovering there at 10 right now? Does the committee go, hey, Clemson just pulled off a top 16, top 15 type of win there. Maybe we should rise them a little bit and actually drop Indiana because they just played a really bad game. And also, I think it's really going to be up to Indiana to put some big-time style points up against Purdue in their regular season finale that maintain that number 10 spot. But it's going to be interesting to watch here. This is a very opportunistic game, not just for Clemson, but also South Carolina. They're just on the outside looking in right now. And the SEC, I guarantee you, they're making push behind closed doors and in the public that they deserve 4 teams in the playoff. Is that the case? Probably not, but they want someone else in there. And South Carolina has been on quite the tear right now. And we know the committee weighs injuries, right, into the production of a team. We saw it last season. That's why they left Florida State out. They said Jordan Travis is out, and they're obviously a different team, so we left them out of the playoff. Well, consider South Carolina. Quarterback Lenoris Sellers did not play in the entire second half of that loss against LSU. If he plays in that game, they probably beat them. He also was injured a little bit earlier in the season when they could have gotten more style points. But now that he's healthy, South Carolina has won 5 straight games. They've beaten a few top 25 teams, and if they were able to go on the road and beat Clemson, I think the SEC, if they wanted to hang their hat on a 3-loss team, it would be a South Carolina, not an Alabama. South Carolina would be the team you'd have to be pushing there to get the committee's attention in my eyes.
Yeah, South Carolina up 3 spots in this week's rankings. Clemson's a 2.5-point home favorite. Tigers 6-2 against the spread in their last 8 games as a home favorite against ranked teams. B-Mac, does Clemson cover or does South Carolina continue its winning ways?
I think Clemson covered. 2 in the hook. You know, when you look at this game between 2 rivalries, it's going to be a close ball game, but I can easily see Clemson winning by 3 points. I think that's a doable line. And the thing about this particular ball game, guys, to your point, B, Lenoris has been a difference maker in the lineup, especially being healthy. If this game was being played in Columbia, I wouldn't even think twice about it. I would take the Gamecocks easily. But with this game being played in Death Valley, I think that posed to be an advantage for Clemson. So when you talk about this atmosphere, how electric it's going to be, it boils down to which quarterback do you trust and believe in more for 4 quarters. Give me the home quarterback in Cade. Not to mention, Klubnik has played some outstanding football. He's become more aggressive and taking shots on the football field. His pass catchers have done a great job in creating separation. And you know when it comes to their defense, they're going to harass Lenoris for 4 quarters. Now, granted, Cade is going to be harassed as well because when you look at that defensive front from South Carolina, they got a bunch of NFL prospects on that line from top to bottom. But I'm taking the home quarterback in this spot because of this rivalry, and with this game being played in Clemson and Death Valley, I think that is the advantage that Clemson needs to be able to cover.
Plenty of playoff implications on the line in the final week of the regular season. Let's talk about a team on upset alert that could shake up the entire playoff picture. Brandon, who are you putting on upset alert here in Week 14?
I'm going to go a little off the grid here and say Boise State hosting Oregon State. Boise State's a 3-touchdown favorite. I understand. But Oregon State played much better in beating and upsetting Washington State this past week. And the reason for that is that quarterback Ben Gulbranson is finally healthy. He's healthy. And also, Gulbranson is 9-2 when he's the starter at Oregon State. Oregon State lost 28-0 a couple weeks ago against Air Force when they had a rotation at quarterback because they couldn't figure anything out, and Gulbranson was out with an injury. But now that he's back, they upset Washington State. This is a dangerous, tricky spot for Boise State, which just struggled against a low-tier Wyoming team this past week. I think Boise State's in a little bit of a danger zone spot here going into this game ahead of the Mountain West Championship.
Well, Ashton Genty was a little banged up in that game. If the committee's looking at that, they go, well, he was out of the game for a little bit, then he came back in. They scored on a 61-yard house call. So you talk about guys that come in and come out based on impact. Look, I know Oregon State's coming off a big win against Washington State in the Pac-2 championship, but Boise State's got to handle business. They know they do. B-Mac, who are you putting on upset alert?
Well, Brandon went off the grid. I'll go on the grid. Let's go to the SEC. Tennessee traveling to Vandy. Any other year,
oh, man.
You're like, if you're a volunteer fan, you're like, okay, we're good.
Okay.
This year, no, sir. This is a different Vandy team from top to bottom. And not to mention, when you go to Vandy, you talk about the home field advantage. That's one place you don't want to play if you're not there from start to finish. You look at what they did against Alabama weeks ago, upset the Crimson Tide. Don't forget about Texas. They took Texas down to the wire as well, a 3-point win. And Brandon, you stated that might be Texas' best win on their schedule. And I agree with you. So for Tennessee, you win, I believe you get into the playoffs. But one thing about the Volunteers, when you follow them the entire season, they're not the same team on the road as they are at home. When they're right there in Neyland Stadium, they're cooking defensively, offensively, they're having fun. But when they travel, they tend to struggle. And you do not want to have that same trend following you when you're playing Vanderbilt in 2024. So I'm putting the Volunteers on upset alert. I've talked to a few Volunteer fans, and they're overly nervous about this game. So that should tell all of us something in terms of what potentially could happen. And you talk about chaos, Hakeem. The last 3 weeks in college football, we've seen chaos circulate. I do believe it once again, the final week in the regular season, there will be a lot of chaos happening. March Madness in November, who has it better than we do? Nobody.
I love it because the Volunteer fans are probably a little nervous because they saw Alabama go there and lose. And I don't know. Maybe this is somewhat of a calming trend. Tennessee's won 5 straight meetings by an average of 29 points per game. So maybe it'll be an upset, and maybe it'll just be a walk-through game. Or the Fighting Barton Simmons will go nuts and upset everything as we know it here in Week 14. Brandon Marcello, Bryant McFadden here on CBS Sports HQ. As you take a look one more time at the projected playoff bracket, Arizona State taking on Ohio State in the first round. Tennessee and Georgia. A rematch of the regular season. Georgia beat Tennessee a couple weeks ago. It was then Georgia figured it out. They're like, okay, we're back to being Georgia. Indiana and Penn State, a Big Ten battle there in Happy Valley. And SMU and Notre Dame clashing in South Bend. Coming up, a full bracket breakdown. Bryant McFadden is back to fill out his bracket. Ohio State is the favorite to win the Natty, but are they the favorites in BMAC's bracket? Next on CBS Sports HQ. The fourth set of college football playoff rankings have been released, and here's a look at the projected bracket. A thing of beauty. Oh, look at that. From top to bottom, first-round matchups here. Tennessee and Georgia. Remember, they met a couple weeks ago. Georgia won that game. Ohio State hosting Arizona State. How about that? Welcome to the playoff field, Sun Devils. SMU, Notre Dame. Both those teams averaging 39 points per game. And Indiana and Penn State in the first round in Happy Valley, a Big Ten battle there at Beaver Stadium. Let's welcome in former Florida State standout and 2-time Super Bowl champ Bryant McFadden here for Bracket Breakdown, filling out the bracket just like college basketball. And look, we're going to start in Columbus here. Ohio State would host Arizona State. Cam Scadaboo against Jim Knowles' defense. Is this a bracket buster?
No, not at all. I'm a big Scadaboo fan. I love how he runs with a physical mindset. But this is a great matchup for Ohio State. Number one, you're right there at the shoe. You're playing against a team that has showed flashes here and there, but clearly haven't been super consistent. So give me the Buckeyes in winning this first matchup against Arizona State.
All right, so Ohio State moving on to the next round. Let's go to the 8-9 game. It features Tennessee against Georgia. The Dogs beat the Vols a couple weeks ago. Does Tennessee get revenge, or does Georgia move on once again?
Georgia moves on once again in between the hedges. That's an ideal matchup for the Georgia Bulldogs. Getting Tennessee at home. Tennessee, historically speaking, over the last few years, they've struggled against the Bulldogs. I think those same struggles will surface in this playoff matchup. Give me the Bulldogs in advancing.
All right, so you're going all chalk so far. Down the bracket, a Big Ten battle. Indiana visiting Happy Valley to play Penn State. We have been campaigning. If there is a home game for Penn State, please play it at night. Show the people what that looks like, please. What are you showing the people? Are you showing them we are, or are the cream and the crimson, are they moving on?
We are Penn State. And to your point, anything outside of 12 o'clock would be ideal for the Penn State fans, in my opinion. But I'm taking Penn State because of their structure, the foundational pieces they have in the trenches. You look at what they do, especially at home. This is a team, when you talk about being the more talented team on the football field, Hakeem, that's when Penn State arises and plays their best football. So give me Penn State against Indiana. Oh, by the way, I think it would be a very, very competitive game, but just that home atmosphere will be the advantage that Penn State will need.
Yeah, you're right, because if they play the afternoon game, it'll be dark, because, I mean, it's dark now. If you've seen it, it's at 4 o'clock, 4:30, it's dark on the East Coast, so that would be at night. All right, that makes sense. 10-seed SMU against 7-seed Notre Dame, both averaging 39 points per game. I'm going to guess the total is going to be in the high 50s. Who advances here?
Notre Dame. Notre Dame. I mean, SMU, no question. They've been very, very entertaining. They've been playing some inspired football. But we look at what Notre Dame has done. Notre Dame has found ways to win in different fashions. We saw what they did against Army, just out physical in Army for 4 quarters, neutralizing, effacing their running game. They're playing some of the best football we've seen from Notre Dame the entire season. Riley Leonard is starting to be the threat that he came into this program. They were hoping for him to be running the football, making timely plays with his arms. And SMU, just the thing about these matchups, Hakeem, the home field advantage is super important in this first 12-seed playoff structure. I think that poses to be a big threat, a big help for Notre Dame. So give me the Fighting Irish.
All right, now let's move to the quarterfinals. Ohio State against Boise State, which I'm sure a lot of fans, if Arizona State's here, I'm sure that they're the ones that want the bye. They don't want to be having to play Ohio State in the first round. But for this exercise, Ohio State would advance to play Boise State. What do we got here? Does Ohio State move on? Are they marching forward onto the semis?
OH.
I-O.
There we have it. Give me Ohio State. Now, this is a hypothetical because we don't know exactly how the final standings will look. But in these projections right here, if you're Ohio State, granted, there's no easy way out. But if you told Ohio State fans, first round you get Arizona State, second round you get Boise, you have to like that. You really have to like that. So I'm taking the more talented team in this matchup. Boise, Ohio State, we all know that favors Ohio State. Give me the Buckeyes.
Yeah, look at the fact, though, that they would have to shut down Ashton Genty. And look, he's already up over 2,000 yards. The concern there now is he tired? I don't know. I don't think he is. But look, you're going to have to slow him down if you're going to have to win. If you're going to win that game, Ohio State defense has to figure that out.
And to your point, Boise's defense will have to slow down the star-studded wide receivers and the entire offense that Ohio State has as well. So, you know, which offense can keep up with the other is the question. I trust that more so with Ohio State than Boise.
All right, next quarterfinal matchup, you got Georgia against Oregon. A little Dan Lanning facing his old school. He was the defensive coordinator for the Dogs, now the head coach at Oregon. Who's moving on there?
Give me the Ducks. Quack, quack.
Okay.
I take Oregon in this spot because of their quarterback play. Yes, Carson Beck, you know, you look at what he did against Tennessee and then last week against UMass, played better football. But do we trust Carson Beck to sustain that level of play? No, because we haven't seen it. Dylan Gabriel, outside of the month of September, he's really been playing more inspired, clean football, and I'm loving what I'm seeing from their defense as well. So give me the Ducks in this spot against UGA.
All right, keep moving through the bracket. Penn State against Miami. This is a difficult game to pick, I think. You have to pick it. What's your pick?
I take Penn State, and the thing about this matchup for Miami, they go into this ball game with the best quarterback in Cam Ward, but the gap of separation isn't a lot when you look at what Drew Aller has done, right? And then you look at the balance they have, and oh, by the way, this boils down to the defense. Which defense do you trust more in this matchup? Penn State or Miami? Miami's defense, unfortunately, has been the Achilles heel for their team in being in very, very close matchups or ultimately losing to a team like Georgia Tech. That has been their calling card the entire year. For Penn State, even losing to Ohio State, their defense stood up to the task. So I think that those two defenses will either provide the winner or lose for one of those teams. So give me Penn State because I trust their defense more than Miami's defense.
You got 3 teams. All right. This is interesting. 3 Big Ten teams here. Okay. Last quarterfinal matchup, Notre Dame against Texas. Who you got?
I was going back and forth with this matchup. Back and forth,
It's easy for me. I'm going to be honest with you, B-Mac. Before you give your pick, it's Notre Dame for me.
I took Texas.
Okay.
I took Texas. And the thing about this matchup, when Notre Dame play against high-level teams from the South in postseason play in neutral sites, we've seen what has happened with Notre Dame. And Hakeem, something that I learned from you, one of the things I've learned from you, which is a lot, you always says the trend is your friend. And in terms of what we've seen from Notre Dame in postseason play in neutral sites against athletic, fast teams from the South, what usually happens, Hakeem?
Yeah, you're right. Yep, that's a good point. They did play a very athletic Army team, though. Just saying.
But no,
with all due respect.
But Army, yeah. But to what I said, postseason play, neutral site games against teams from the South. Something about Notre Dame where they kind of lay down. And I'm just saying.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
All right. So Texas moves on to play Penn State. All right, to the semifinals we go. You got 3 Big Ten teams in the semis. How about that? Okay. Ohio State against Oregon for perhaps the 3rd time. Who's playing for the Natty?
OH.
I-O.
I got Ohio State. Ryan Day is coaching the best team money can buy. And they expect for him to get to this point. The thing I like about this matchup, Oregon, Ohio State. Yes, Oregon had the bye, but when you look at the rhythm that Ohio State was able to establish in this playoff bracket, playing against Arizona State, playing against Boise, then you get into this Oregon matchup with the rhythm. I like that spot to really help the Buckeyes. And to your point, we don't know exactly what is going to happen in the Big Ten championship game. We don't know if these 2 teams will face off against each other because who knows, could be some chaos. But in this spot, I'm taking Ohio State. And it was a very, very close ball game the first time up in Eugene that led to the victory for the Ducks. I think the total opposite would happen in favor of the Buckeyes.
All right, so in the other semifinal, Penn State and Texas, you have a chance here to give us a rematch of the Nittany Lions and the Buckeyes. Or are you going to go Longhorns and Buckeyes? What do you got here?
We are Penn State. I'm taking Penn State in this spot. Okay. I'm taking Penn State in this spot because one thing about Texas, their schedule, they haven't really, just wow you with their schedule in terms of the teams they played and how competitive they've been. Their best win right now, as we see it this week, has been against Vandy, a three-point road win against Vandy. That's their best win. The thing about Texas, if you don't have the dogs in the trenches to really do some damage against them, they're going to score points. But Georgia showed all of us how to neutralize and slow down the Longhorns offense. Guess what? Penn State has the same like personnel. When you look at some of the pro prospects they have on their front, they're going to harass you. They're going to get after you. They have talented guys in the secondary that tackle well, and I love their balance they have on their offense. So something that when you look at all the projections that we thought we would see, no one really saw Penn State doing what I have them doing right now. I have Penn State getting to the national championship game in Atlanta, playing against Ohio State.
Okay. All right. So we just saw this earlier this month. Ohio State beat Penn State by 7. Penn State turned it over at the end of the game on downs, 4th and goal. They didn't even go to Tyler Warren. The fans were asking for James Franklin to get fired. That's not going to happen because he's got a massive buyout, $56 million. So does Penn State get revenge from that loss earlier this month, or is Ohio State winning national championship number 9?
Well, sorry, Penn State fans. I guess you might as well get mad at James Franklin once again because the same thing is going to happen from what we've seen This year, the year before, the year before, the year before, the year before. Give me Ohio State in a neutral setting in Atlanta, beating Penn State. To my point earlier, Ryan Day is coaching the most talented team that money can buy. And those players are living up to the billing. They're living up to the NIL benefits they're receiving. And they have put their team in a really, really good spot with the experience, talent, and the physical mindset to be able to hoist that championship trophy. So for the second straight week in a row, I have Ohio State winning it all.
Just think a few years ago who was on that Buckeyes team. C.J. Stroud, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Chris Olave, and Garrett Wilson. And they didn't win a title with all those guys. Last I checked, all those guys in the NFL.
Marvin Harrison Jr. Don't forget about a young Marvin Harrison Jr.
Right. Last I checked, those guys are all in the NFL. And you're telling me this Ohio State team can win it all. I love it. I love it. Of course I'm gonna love it. I'm an Ohio State fan. I'm not gonna sit here and sit like I'm not gonna love it. But hey, they got to go take care of business against Michigan this week. Okay, that's right now. It's that team up north. They've lost 3 in a row to the Wolverines. Got to take care of business this week before we can start getting all excited about a national championship. Ohio State is the favorite to win it all. 8 titles in school history. Their last in 2014, the first year of the college football playoff when they beat Oregon. If Ohio State beats Michigan next, this Saturday at home, it'll be the Buckeyes and Ducks in the Big Ten Championship on December 7th, the game you can see on CBS.